Oh, this is the most humbling day of my life. And I walk in and I'm beside myself and I'm in tears. And so I call Patrick, and you know Patrick. I call Patrick and I'm like, Patrick, I have to tell you something, but you cannot laugh. And I'm crying. And he's like, okay. And I'm like,
I wish I could have had a camera on Pat for that
I
moment.
do too. Now I do too. So I tell him this and there's nothing. It's dead silent. I'm like, did you mute me? He's like, you told me not to laugh. I had to. I'm like, damn it, Pat.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Role Model Podcast. I am your host, Derek Peterson, and today I am joined by the amazing and beautiful Weslea O'Connor, who I've worked with for a number of years in real estate, and then Weslea made the move to what would you call it? The industry in general.
Like the aesthetic beauty and plastic surgery industry.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so Wes is the COO of Saxon MD. And then not only that, she's also recently gone through a bout of cancer and a survivor. And she is the writer behind the Survivor's Edit, which she shares parts of her story and the resilience it takes for going through situations like that. So welcome, Wes. Where does this podcast find you today?
Well, today I just got off of work and I'm planning some of my future posts. I think it's been kind of enlightening and super humbling to see how some of the things I've written have started impacting people and the level of connection it's brought. So I'm excited.
That's really cool. And something that I think a lot of people don't pay attention to if they haven't gone through it. So I'm excited to unpack some of that stuff with you. But
yeah,
before we get there, this podcast starts from the premise of this in the Role Model Podcast is that as we grow and mature, and that hopefully most of us are doing that, if we could go back in time and meet a younger version of ourselves, what period of time would you meet that version of you, and what piece of advice would you give them?
So that's so hard because I think if you break it down, everybody has several moments where they'd like to go back and comfort a younger version of themselves. That said, I think I would go see myself in my early 30s when I was going through my divorce from my first husband and I was a wreck. And I just felt like I've done it. I've ruined my entire life and nothing is ever going to be okay for me again. I think I'd go back and I'd tell that girl at 30, girl, this is just the beginning. You've got so much good ahead of you and you just need to put your head down, get through this, do the work to get through it. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Wow. So tell me a little bit more about that. What got you from how did your first marriage come to fruition? And how long did you know that person? You don't have to divulge all obviously the details of it unless you want to. Our podcast
like name and social security number.
Yeah. If you want to just delve up some dirt, I'm sure we'll get much more views on this for that. But how did that journey start? Where your marriage and where you guys met and so on?
You know, it's a sad story because I think if I'd had, of course, hindsight's 2020, but if I'd had the knowledge that I have now, I would not have endeavored into the relationship like I did. So we met early 20s. We'd gone to high school together. We knew each other through high school, but we weren't really in the same crowd. And I officially went on my first date with him right before I moved from Albuquerque to Rochester for my first radio job. And so there was this sense of I was missing out on something. And I think what it did is it put us into this really fast-tracked relationship where we thought we might miss out on something. So we had to jump on the opportunity. And he came to visit me in Rochester and literally went home, packed up his stuff and came back and moved in. And I look back at that and I'm like, what the heck were you thinking, girl? Slow down. So that didn't start off. I mean, it was fun at the time. It seemed like I was caught up in this whirlwind, but we moved in together before anyone had even said the L word. So that's fast-tracked.
I feel you on that. My first wife and I, we met got engaged and were married in less than 9 months. So
Oh,
it was there's a piece of that that's like, we grew up in the love story era. Like we wanted to
we
live the
did.
movies, right? Like
I mean, I grew
it's
up with Disney princesses.
yeah, exactly. So you were in Rochester, New York. What were you doing? Like tell me a little bit about your work and what you were doing at that time.
So I started out as the evening radio personality on 92.5 WBEE.
Old
And
school terrestrial radio.
yes, and it was like my lifelong dream. I was the kid that had a double tape deck and would record songs and then do the intros between songs. So it was something I always wanted to do. And I got there and I went from nights to middays pretty quickly. And then when I was in middays, I got offered the opportunity to be the assistant program director. And for those of you who don't know what that is, I was scheduling music and I was communicating with record labels to see what new artists we'd play. And I was planning our guitar pulls, which is like a round table of artists. And so it was a really fun time in my life. And I think also the fun time in my life for that played into wanting to fast track that relationship. Because I was 23 and you could not have told me that I did not have it all figured out.
Yeah, of course at that time. So how long did you do that for?
I was in Rochester for a little over 4 years, and from there, I decided that I would take a job in Nashville and work on the other side with the artist to take them to radio. And
How did
so,
that opportunity come about?
I was really close with a lot of the reps that I worked with, and one of the reps that I was closest with knew that there was a new offshoot of his label starting, and he knew a couple of the artists that they would have, and so he started talking to me about it, and it was a natural progression, and I loved that, but man, if I thought that I had stress in my marriage when I was in radio and just going to do public events on the weekends when I was traveling and only home about 7, 8 days a month, the stress heightened quickly.
Yeah, of course. So he moved in with you when you were
Mhm.
in Rochester, and then
23.
how quickly did you guys get married after that?
We got married, let's see here, about 4 years later. So we did date for a while, but I think I knew in my heart that my family didn't really support it. And I don't know if even you knew this about me, but when we decided to get married, we told our friends and family that it was an engagement party. And we just had a
Ooh.
justice of the peace show up and marry us there. And my mom was like,
Wow.
"What's going on?" And they
Your
didn't have
mom was
time to
like, "No,
talk
I
me
thought
out
I
of
had
it.
time."
I know. Well, and now they've told me that, like, every one of my friends, every one of my family's been like, "If you had told us that that was a wedding, we would have told you, 'Don't do it.'" And
Yeah.
I just didn't give them the opportunity. I was gonna do what I was gonna do.
Yep. Hindsight's always 20. Those conversations were the worst to have with my friends after my divorce because, like, they're all like, oh, yeah, we knew. I was like, you just didn't say anything, including my mom. I was like, how about you tell me the truth when it's happening? She's like, well, I didn't want to mess anything up. I was like, isn't that the whole point?
Isn't that the
Uh,
point? Shouldn't you be there? But then
yeah,
finally someone said, "Would you have listened?" And I was like, "Oh, okay,
no.
well, point taken." But I mean, still, could you have given the opinion?
Correct. Yeah, because then you could have at least told me that you told me so. Like later, I mean, there's a good
Then you would have
chance I
had
wasn't going
something
to
to
listen.
throw. Exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I
yeah,
would.
no, I
It would have been
mean,
helpful for
terrible
me
idea.
because yeah, my second marriage was just as much of a train wreck, and I was like, if somebody had told me that on my first marriage, I might have listened for the second one, but it took the second one going bad before I actually got it right. I think so. Okay, so Rochester to Nashville, still
Yep,
married.
yep.
What's going on at this point in you guys' relationship?
And I mean, it was just I was never home. I didn't know how to be married. I'd never been in I mean,
Mm,
no one's in a successful relationship until they are in a successful relationship. So you learn as you go. And
yep.
I was partying because I was on the road. I was on the road with artists. I was meeting people. I was wining and dining people. I was in bed at midnight up at 4. Like
Yeah,
it was a rough life. And I think you can relate to that. Um,
yeah.
it's not
It,
easy and it takes a toll on you and everyone around you.
Yeah, the music industry is not for the faint of heart, and it's not nearly as glorious as everybody makes it out to be. But you know, you
No.
when you're in your 20s, you have to learn the hard way more often than not. You have to experience, and I'm thankful that I went through the experiences I did, because I think maybe if I hadn't, I might have always chased it.
Yeah,
Like subconsciously, I might have always wondered, oh, what if? But having experienced it, I have zero desire now ever to indulge in it again. But okay, so relate marriage is starting to get rocky because you're just never around. Like,
never around.
what finally what finally ended it?
Well, I actually, it's funny because the post that I'm publishing on Wednesday of next week on my Survivor's Edit Substack page is about some of that. And I really think that we liked the idea of each other, but particularly him to me. I am outgoing. I have a lot of energy. I love being around people. You give me an audience, I will talk. You put me on a stage, I'll take the mic. I'm not scared of public speaking, and I really like that. And so I think he was attracted to certain parts of me, but when it came to the reality of it, it didn't work out. And same, like I felt like I was the center of his world and I didn't want to be the center. I wanted to join somebody's world that was already full and fruitful, and we just didn't align in that way. And sadly we had some pregnancy losses, and that also puts a lot of stress on a relationship. And
Yeah.
after a while, I think I was deeply unsettled and unhappy within myself. I didn't feel like I could do the one thing I was put on this earth to do, which is at that time I thought was having a baby. And
Yeah.
it took a toll on me, it took a toll on him, and differently, and then we couldn't come back together.
Really, that's interesting. So the I didn't know that. Were you so you guys were trying to have kids and it didn't work out, and that
Mm-mm.
ultimately put a bunch of like when you look back on that season, is there like that's hard for everybody. Like,
It
and it's such a
is. It's
weird it's
devastating.
yeah, it's devastating, and then it makes no sense, right? It's like, I have friends that for years tried every which way to get pregnant, and then I looked at my ex-wife and she got pregnant, and I'm like, "How does this make any sense?" Like, I'm not joking, like, our 2nd kid, I was like, "Who's the dad?" Like, I'm like, I have no I like the the things that we have done really don't constitute a kid. So I'm like, it's unless there's a miracle happening. But I mean, she might not be my kid. I hope she is. So, if
Oh
she's
my
not at this point, she's already. If she's not at my 2nd daughter is
god.
more looks more like me than my older daughter. So if she even if she wasn't my kid at this point, I don't care, and I would not want to know anyway. So
Well,
we
even
are
if she wasn't at this point, she's your doppelganger, so I find it highly unlikely.
I would agree with that. I think she's a miracle. Let's just call it that. So what ended up finally being like the nail in the coffin that ended you guys' marriage? Was there like a specific event, or did it just kind of dissolve and you guys
There
were
were a
like,
few
we're
specific events. I didn't treat him well, and I didn't treat myself well, and I learned a lot about self-respect through
yeah,
that relationship. 2 things happened. One, I experienced despair, unlike even cancer, the day that I realized I was losing our first pregnancy. And there's
mm,
something that happens, and I'm not certain from a male perspective, but for a woman, the first time you find out you're pregnant, you plan a life that hasn't been lived. There's hopes and there's dreams, and you picture yourself pushing this kid on a swing, and you picture holding their hand and walking down the street, or holding both their hands in their first steps. And to feel that slipping away and to know that there's nothing you can do is a really helpless feeling. And I laid in bed that day sobbing like there was nothing that could have consoled me. And I think I didn't recognize it at the time, but it pushed me into a really deep depression. And I was unfaithful, and not just once, but multiple times. And when I talk about it now, I know that people get labeled for infidelity, and I don't look at it as black and white. If I'm married now. My husband is amazing. We're going to celebrate our 10-year anniversary this year. And
yeah,
there is not anything that would push me into the arms of another man. There was something that I needed to work on within myself in my first marriage that I hadn't
yeah,
resolved. And I think the biggest takeaway, and I was just telling um, somebody this in the last couple of weeks, loving yourself and respecting yourself are paramount to having successful relationships.
yeah.
So.
It's the only way, to be honest. Like if you don't, it's the weird dynamic that people I think really get really confused about self-love. Self-love is not pampering yourself. Self-love is actually figuring out your values and then living by them even when it costs you something.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's such a hard, and it's almost impossible to do when you're young. It's figuring out who you are enough to uh hold the value, because like, if you ask me when I was in my 20s and 30s, I would have been like, yeah, like I value the truth, I value all these things, but when pressed hard enough or when the loss would have been big enough, I would have lied my face off. I
That's
would
it.
have done, yeah. And and the ramifications for that, until you've gone through enough of it to realize like, oh, like if I value the truth, then I better start living by it. That's a really, there's no, it's the, what do they say? Youth is wasted on the young.
I was
The
just thinking that. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's sad because the lessons that make you realize that are the lessons that not only do you lose a part of your younger self through, but the lessons that mold and shape who you become as a person. So it's both beautiful and horrible at the same time. Like I went through this thing where I didn't respect myself. I compromised my values. I treated the person that I was supposed to love the most horribly. And I remember the day that I found out that he knew about all my infidelity. For some reason, I'd grabbed his phone and he'd changed my name in his phone to something that I won't say, but it starts with a W and it ends with an E. And it's not a nice word to have thrown at you. And I was like, at first I was so pissed off. And then I was like, my goodness, he's right. But then when he saw that I saw it, the heartbreak on his face, I vowed to never hurt another human like I knew I'd hurt that man. And
Mm.
I will never put somebody through that. Patrick, my husband and I have had the conversation, and I don't foresee that ever happening. But I would rather him break my heart than cheat on me. So tell me you don't want to be with me. I'll tell you I don't want to be
Yeah.
with you, but don't disrespect the sanctity of the marriage we've built. And I wish that I hadn't done that. That young girl, that's part of what broke me so hard and what made it so hard for me to move on. It took me years to forgive myself for that. I saw myself through the lens of my ex-husband, of his family, of his friends, and the things they thought about me, instead of realizing everybody makes mistakes, everybody learns, and everybody
Yeah.
has to pick themselves up, brush themselves off, learn from those things, and become a better person because of it.
Yeah, 1,000%. And it's brutal to go through that, but it's impossible to forgive other people until you've learned how to actually forgive yourself. You
That's a
cannot,
fact.
yeah, I don't, there's no other way around it. And this is what we talk about when we talk about self-love. Is part of self-love is learning how to let things go for yourself, learning how to actually forgive your own failures and recognizing like, yeah, I might have hurt somebody, but and then understanding the values behind it, and understanding what reconciliation looks like, understanding what forgiveness looks like and what it means, and to actually be sorry for something and make amends for it. And also then, once you've done all of those things, allowing the other person to still hate you or not like you and being okay with it. And as
Yeah.
that was the hardest thing for me in a lot, in throughout most of my journey, was just being okay. I wanted people to like me so bad that was the trigger point for me with most of my terrible decisions. But it sounds like, and to be honest, I sound a lot like I probably was a lot like your first husband when I was in my 20s, because my entire world, I wanted it to be my ex-wife. And
And that's so
uh
much pressure on the other
it
side. Like, having been
yeah,
there, I felt like there was no amount that I could show up that was enough showing up, and there was nothing that I could do that was enough for him, and
yeah,
I couldn't put words to it at the time, but that probably influenced my decisions. I'm not putting blame anywhere but me, but
yeah.
I think that it was a toxic mix, and we just couldn't see the forest for the trees. What's that saying that comes to mind that I had to lean into during that time is, "What other people think of me is none of my business."
Yeah. No, but I will say this, having done a lot of the work coming out of, like, from being in your ex-husband's shoes with my first wife, and we won't get into it, but living out a similar story from the opposite perspective, a lot of the work I learned and did on myself was that, yeah, like me making her my world basically was like hooking a siphon up to her for validation all the time. And I don't think she could have communicated it like that to me, but the feeling was there. And when somebody's trying to siphon something from you, your instinct is to push away.
It's
Always.
resist. Yeah,
So
resist. Yep.
it's the instinct is like, oh, this person needs something from me and they're trying to funnel it from me. And you may not be able to articulate it, but when you feel it, your instinct is like, ooh, I don't like this. And my ex-wives both said the same thing to me that blew my mind because nobody else had ever said it to me, which was they didn't like me and they didn't respect me. And almost everybody else in my life didn't have those feelings about me. And
Yeah.
so when I heard those things, I was like, man, I've got to figure out what the fuck is wrong because I don't want to go through this again. Like, what am I doing wrong? But let's circle back to, okay, so marriage ends. What ultimately ended up bringing you to Austin?
My husband. So I go to the music
Ah,
industry and I'm working in the
yep.
music industry and I became dear friends with one of my artists. That artist married an Austin police officer and my husband was an Austin police officer at the time. And so they got married on 11/11/11 in Las Vegas. And to say that it was a crazy day in Vegas, they had weddings from 12:01 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. and it was like every 10 minutes in out in out. There were like little people dressed up as cherubs and there were Elvis impersonators everywhere you looked. It was chaos of marriage. It was just marriage vomited on Vegas that day. And sadly, that couple's not together. But I remember sitting outside the little white chapel waiting for the wedding to start. And I heard this laugh. And you've met my husband. His laugh is huge. It takes up the room. And
Yes.
I heard a laugh and I turned around and I saw him and I was like, whoa, that guy, I liked everything about him. This is a family show, so I won't tell you what I told my friend, but I was like, I want to know that guy. And I don't know in what way I want to know him, but I want to know him. And a couple months later, I was in Austin for their like Austin reception with friends and family. And I remember my friend said, hey, I know that you like Patrick, but you need to figure your shit out before you get with him. And
Yeah.
he told him something similar. And then I think it was not that long after, maybe a couple months, I was Facebook stalking him. Derek, didn't I hit an accidental send friend request and I didn't know it? So I wake up the next day and it's like, Patrick has accepted your friend request. And I was like, oh, no, but the rest is history. So it worked out okay.
Yeah, as I say, it's a love story now, just a
It
different way.
is.
The real
Yes.
love stories are not nearly as romantic. They have moments, but they're not nearly as romanticized as people make them out to be. Still very
Yeah, I'm a
beautiful,
stalker.
but I probably was too. I remember the first time I saw my wife. Now I saw her walking through Lifetime, and I was on a doing sit-ups on one of the machines, and I literally just about like my jaw hit the floor, and I was like, I'm going to find a way to meet her. Which,
She's
ironically
stunning.
enough, like 6 months or not even 6 months, like a few months after that, a friend sent me her photo and was like, hey, I know this woman that has kids and wants to date somebody with kids. Are you interested? And I was like, fuck yeah, let's do
Isn't that
this.
crazy how that stuff comes
It's
around? I
such
mean,
a weird thing, right?
it is.
The world just works in crazy ways. So okay, so you moved to Austin, meet Pat, or you and Pat met in Vegas, and then
Met in Vegas. I was still living in Nashville, and we spent about a little over a year dating long distance. I think we started officially dating on 10, 11, 12. Weird numbers come up in our
that's awesome.
relationship. So it's easy to remember when we had the conversation via text while he was at his nephew's wedding in Maine. But we got that settled, and then it was just figure out how to get to Austin. And then I had an unfortunate situation with an artist happen, and I was like, my bosses didn't listen. They didn't care. It was really gross. And I just realized, this was before the Me Too movement, or I would have been empowered to say something at the time. Again, I was young. I was like,
Yeah,
I feel like if I say something, I risk never working in Nashville again. So I
yeah.
didn't push it past telling my bosses and I ended up quitting and I moved to Austin without a job, which was a huge, scary, scary thing because I was like, this is feeling a whole lot like the first time around and I don't want to make the same mistakes. But this time it was very different. And Patrick was nothing but supportive. I mean, he wanted to kill the guy, but he was very supportive of me moving here. And we've made it work. We've had some crazy challenges and we've learned to work through them. And I think having the foundation of a long distance relationship provided us with space to learn how to communicate early on. And certainly that communication has evolved a lot over the
Yeah.
decade plus we've been together. But we knew how to talk before I ever moved here. And that was huge because when shit hit the fan, as it inevitably does in every relationship, we knew how to come back.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what ultimately did you end up starting to do once you got to Austin? What was your first job here?
I wish I'd stuck with it because I could have been like the original home edit. I was organizing people's houses and I was a house manager. I went on care.com and I was like, I don't care what I do, I just need a job. So I
Yeah.
went on care.com and I offered to organize people's houses. I was meeting the interior designer and I was power washing driveways and I was picking kids up from school and taking the car in to get service. I mean, I was whatever you needed me to do. Is I was like TaskRabbit before TaskRabbit. So, but I had about
Wow.
5 families that I worked with, just those families, and they kept me busy full time. So if I could have found a way at the time or not have been in the space I was in where I felt like I was starting from scratch, I probably would have monetized it. But I'm thankful I didn't because from there I went into real estate and I loved real
Yeah.
estate.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what started that journey.
One of the women that I was doing all these little fun organizing and tasks for was a Keller Williams realtor, and so she encouraged me to get my license, and looking back, I realized Keller Williams has a way of pulling people in with the promise of money and signing people up underneath them, but I didn't know that
I
at the
was
time,
pulled
and
in by a
so
Keller Williams agent as well.
there's
It was
it's not a uncommon story.
yes,
But
correct.
I got there and I just felt like I was on an island and didn't know what to do because, as you know, getting your license is just the first step. It's a lot more intricate than that once you get your foot in the door.
Yes.
So then I had to find support, and thankfully, the leaders of the team that you and I met on, I met them, and they were at Realty Austin at the time, and they took me in and they taught me a whole lot, and they taught me they both. It was great because it was a husband and wife that ran this team, and they had such different perspectives of how to approach a situation. And so what it did is it taught me how to have my own voice. I'd get the perspective of the husband and the perspective of the wife. And then I could come back and be like, okay, so where do I fall in this? And I think it really helped me to become a great realtor. And looking back, my transition out of real estate, I was in real estate for just about a decade, came at the perfect time. And I don't
Yeah.
know if it was a universe thing, a God thing. Uh, I ended up accepting a job outside of real estate. What was that? 5 months before I got diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma, and having the safety net of a W-2 job and not having to hustle day in, day out, 4th of July nights, weekends, 60 plus hours a week was I don't think I could have done cancer and real estate well.
Oh, it's would have been brutal. Yeah. Like real estate's a tough industry and thank God. Hopefully well, I guess do you get your health care through Pat?
I do,
Okay, so
thankfully.
so that wasn't a problem. I was like,
No, that
I
wasn't a
get my
problem,
health care
but
through Tamara as well. So
yeah, that
thank
when you're
God.
a realtor, you wanna make sure you have that part figured out.
That's it's why we partner with other people. It's like you're not a real estate agent, right? Because if so, we're gonna pay ungodly amounts for health insurance.
Oh, for
So
sure, for sure.
hopefully you have a job that actually supports this. Um,
Oh.
okay, so real estate ends, and I remember that quite well because I was on your team and I was very sad when you left. And you start your new job. Before we get into the cancer journey, which I want to spend some time on, tell me like what drew you to the company that you're at, and what started that journey? What was the trigger that was like, man, I don't want to do real estate anymore, and this seems like a great path for me.
Well, I mean, you remember 2023 in Austin in real estate. 2020 was amazing. 2021 was amazing. And then 2022, 2023, things started changing a little bit post COVID and interest rates started going up and it made it really difficult. So I was working a ton of hours, 60 plus hours a week, getting home 10 o'clock at night, driving from San Antonio to Belton and to Bastrop and almost all the way to Fredericksburg to
Yep.
sell houses. So I was in the car nonstop. I wasn't seeing Patrick. I was never home on the weekend. I'd get home at 9 o'clock at night and write contracts. I was burnt out, and
Yeah.
I was hustling, but I wasn't making money because the clients that I had at the time were scared because the interest rates had just started to go up. I think if I'd stuck with it a little bit longer, I would have found a way to make it work, or a new way to
Yeah.
make it work. But it was exhausting, and I didn't realize at the time what was fueling my exhaustion. So when the Dr. Saxon, who owns Saxon MD, was a friend of mine, is a friend of mine, and she and I started talking, and she was really looking for someone to come in and help her with her business. And the more that we talked, the more intriguing it became. And this was at the beginning of the Eras tour. So we went to see Taylor Swift together in Dallas. And it was it was on the first leg. But
I know. I remember seeing the photos on Instagram and being jealous. Like, the hell? Why?
it
Why
was
wasn't I
such
invited?
a the best 3 hours of my life. I want to go back. I love watching it when it's on, since it's on Disney. I'll rewatch it occasionally.
Yeah.
But sorry, Pat, it was not actually the best 3 hours of my life. I was kidding, but it was a really good 3 hours.
No, we'll edit
But
that out
after
so Pat
that,
doesn't see it. Just kidding.
but after that, we just started talking even more deeply about it. And I have never managed a team on the level that I managed a team here. So
Mhm.
I'd managed people before in radio. I'd, had a couple people, the part-timers would report to me, and I would do air checks, which is where you listen to their on-air shift and you give them feedback. I would do that kind of stuff. And I occasionally had some direct reports in other jobs, but never built a team. And that was very intriguing to me. And again, one of those hindsight's 2020 things. It is a labor of love to build a team. And so I learned a lot. I've learned a lot in the last 3 years, Derek.
Yes.
It's interesting working with people. I mean, it's different. Real estate's so transactional, so you're working with people, but there's an end point. And
Yes.
building a team in a business like this, you're building a long-term relationship. So it was very different.
Yeah. That's what most people, almost every person I've talked to that manages people is like, yes, it's the most rewarding and the hardest thing that you will do in your life. So
Ask me on a Tuesday, it's going
it's
to be different on a Thursday.
yes, correct, which totally makes sense. So okay, so you make the transition, you're working, you're building a team, and then what happened that spurred you to go to the doctor? Was it a regular checkup? What finally was like, hey, is something wrong with me?
It's an interesting story. So for about a year and a half, had had swollen lymph nodes. And I could feel them. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go to my primary and he puts me on antibiotics. He's like, you know what? They didn't respond to antibiotics. I bet it's nothing. And so, flash forward a year, they're still there. But now I'm noticing that in my bathroom, the lit from above, and I could see shadows on my neck where those lymph nodes were getting bigger. And I had people feel them, and they're like, yeah, I mean, I can feel them, but I don't know if it's something you need imaging for. With, say, people, I mean doctors. But finally, I went to my gyno appointment that year, and I told her, I was walking out the door. I had my hand on the door, and I said, hey, oh, you know what? One more thing. It's probably nothing, but I have these swollen lymph nodes, and they've been like this for over a year. Would you just check them out? So she brings me back in and sits me down. She goes, I don't love them. It's probably nothing, but let's get imaging. So she orders an ultrasound. My mammogram was the following week, and my mammogram and my ultrasound results came back at the same time. And the ultrasound was abnormal, and the mammogram showed that there was lymph nodes in my armpit area that were also not normal. So at that point, they're like, okay, maybe this is breast cancer, but something's going on. So we need to get further imaging, and we need to do it quick. The bad thing was this was right around the holidays. So my imaging was delayed by Thanksgiving. It was delayed by people being out of town. It was really hard to get an appointment at the end of the year because everyone's trying to meet their deductible. So
Yep.
it was a horrible time to be trying to get a diagnosis that you really need. And I think it was beginning of December, I'd had a biopsy. It was the same day that we had the team Christmas party that I went to that year. It was that same day, that morning I had a biopsy. That evening I go there, and it was really hard for me to even be engaged. I'm like, you're talking to people, but you're like, in the back of your head, you're wondering what's going on and if everything's going to be okay. Cause by now this is the third set of imaging, and I'm waiting for like the final answer. And it was December 15th. I was in Dallas. We have a satellite clinic through work up in Dallas, and Patrick was up there with me. He was moving an exam chair back, so he had a U-Haul. I called the doctor's office to see if they'd heard anything, and they said, definitely won't be till Monday, so just go have a good weekend. It's raining like crazy, so Patrick gets in the car and he's going to drive back to Austin with his exam chair so it doesn't take him even longer, and I'm a few hours behind him. And no sooner did he leave, I go to the bathroom. I'm literally sitting on the toilet. I'm taking a pee and my phone rings and I have to, it's my doctor. I see it's my doctor. So I'm answering
Yeah.
midstream. I find out I have cancer. And I was like, this is the, you don't imagine being told that, but you certainly don't imagine being told that while you're sitting on the toilet. And so I'm in shock and I can't cry. I can't think. I can't form a thought. And Dr. Saxon walks into the bathroom at that time, and I just put the phone on speaker and I hold it out to her. I say nothing. I don't know what to do. And so she hears that it's a doctor and there's medical stuff going on. So luckily she has the wherewithal to remember what they said, because all I heard was cancer and I kind of shut down. Um,
Yeah.
and they had me on the following Monday. I was in the oncologist office getting some insight. I will say that once you get the cancer diagnosis, at least my experience was, then you're moved through the system pretty quickly. Uh,
Mm.
I knew I wanted to get a second opinion. Otherwise, I would have started treatment really quickly as well. But my first PET scan was December 26th of 2023. And so Christmas, I didn't get to have a Christmas dinner. You have to follow a strict diet because you can't have very much sugar in your system because sugar lights up like cancer lights up. So December 26th, we get up super freaking early in the morning. They want you to be warm. You have to keep your body warm. It's not good to get cold during that time. So I'm bundled up. I have my little Grogu hoodie, or
Yeah.
not hoodie, what is that, little ball cap on. And I'm like bringing all of my comfort items with me and scared to death and I can't eat. And then they go in and they tell you that they're going to inject you with this the radioactive stuff and you have to use a special bathroom and no one else is allowed to use that bathroom. And so it's one scary thing on top of another scary thing.
Mm.
And then thankfully I'm not claustrophobic because then they put you in a little tube and that tube just scans your body for all the stuff. And I think it was 2 or 3 days later, they called me to tell me that it's stage 3, which for lymphoma is different than other cancers. That means it's both above your diaphragm and below your diaphragm. Stage 4 means that it's gone into your bloodstream. So I was happy to know that it wasn't in my blood. So then it was just a matter of the figuring out the protocol and getting on chemo and immunotherapy. Um, Thankfully, my cancer was slow growing. The weird thing is that then they're like, well, you've probably had this for a really long time. You could have had this as long as 10 years. So then you're just thinking like, well, I go to the doctor and I stay on top of my health. It's weird to think that something like that could be living inside of you.
Yeah. I was like, that wouldn't surprise me because I don't go to the doctor, and most men.
Men are bad at it.
Yes, we are terrible at it. I was also not laughing at your diagnosis. I was laughing
No, I
because you
know.
answered the phone while you were peeing. And I have one friend that every time I call her, she pees while we're on the phone. And she doesn't mention it, but it's like so obvious that you can
You
hear it.
know, you can't hide
I'm
it.
like, yeah, I'm just like, again, all right, cool. I guess this is just our relationship. You're good with this. So, but walk me through, what were you feeling at the time? Like we talked a little bit earlier about like the devastation and depression you went through and, losing a child because of what your expectations and your thinking, right? When you get pregnant, and I get this completely because, I've been through a miscarriage before, and which is interesting because from a male perspective, it holds no candle to what you went through. And so, but there is like a level of planning once you
Yeah.
find out that you start to think through stuff. You start to problem solve, you start to plan, you start to think, okay, how can we manage this? What does life look like? And then, once you've wrapped your head around a lot of that, you're like, it starts to feel a little exciting, right? And
Yeah.
so cancer kind of feels like the opposite. You find out
Oh,
you have it and you're like, I just want this fucking thing out of me. So like, what was the emotional roller coaster like of that? And tell me like what happened from diagnosis to where you are now.
well, one, Patrick became my security blanket. I didn't want to be anywhere without him. So it was really weird just getting up and going to work. Like I was still trying to stay in my normal routines because for me, I knew that if I stayed home and like leaned into it, I was just going to get depressed and I didn't want that. I'm really good at isolating myself and I was trying very hard not to do so. So, I decided to get a second opinion at MD Anderson, but this whole time, it's really hard to explain. Have you ever been on cold medicine and you feel like your head's on the end of a balloon? You
Yes.
kind of feel like that nonstop. And so I felt
Mm.
surreal and like I couldn't connect with my reality. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I'd be trying to type an email and I'd lose my train of thought. Every time somebody came to me with what, like somebody called in sick one day and I was like, you're not sick. You should probably come into, I mean, I didn't say that, but in my heart, I'm like, yeah,
Like,
well, I haven't
bitch,
told
do you
you, but
have cancer?
I have freaking cancer. Do you have a
Yeah.
cold? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah,
It
exactly.
just felt like nothing outside of getting that figured out made any sense or took any precedence or had any level of importance. And so it was a
Yeah.
really, like, even just driving home, if someone honked at me, I'd be like, you don't even freaking know I have cancer. I'm dealing with a lot. Like, everything felt like I just needed space to be comforted. And I didn't know how to get that, and I didn't know what my life was gonna look like, and I didn't know if I was gonna lose my hair, if I was gonna lose weight, if I was gonna look hollow, if I didn't know, and it's weird
Yeah.
to go to the vanity aspect, but I I just there's a certain image that we conjure when someone says a cancer patient, and I didn't
Yeah.
know how to put myself inside of that image.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think that that's weird at all because I think, look at the history of America in the last 50. I mean, we thrive on vanity. And all of
yeah.
us, like what we look like matters. Like, there's a reason GLP-1s are like what, one in like six people are on them now.
Yeah.
And because we all care about how we look, whether we say it or not. And yeah, like that stuff matters because how we present ourselves to the world is also indicative of, is there something going on inside of us? So like I would be terrified too because you lose your hair, you look like a cancer patient, and now all of a sudden you're a symbol for something that maybe you don't want to be a symbol for, and
And that's
also
it.
something that you didn't choose.
Well, that and I didn't want sympathy. I wanted consideration for, and I didn't
Mm.
tell a lot of people. I mean, I didn't call and tell you. I think you found out through someone else and then called me.
No,
It
you
wasn't that
called
I was,
me. What?
did I? I don't,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. I don't remember. I don't remember any of it,
Yes.
but what I remember is, and
Well,
that's
now
the
I
other
feel
thing.
even
Like
more
I've
special that I
lost
was on that list.
I've lost blocks of time through there because I think I was in shock and in survival mode. And I remember making notifications and not really knowing what to say. And you know me well enough to know I'm an awkward person and I often try to like fill silence with jokes and that's not the time to do it. So like I would call people and tell them, yeah, so like I have cancer. And then there'd be this long pause. And then sometimes people would start crying and then they'd apologize to me for crying. And I'm like, no, no, like I feel loved through that. Don't apologize. I don't know what to say right now. So I know you don't know what to say right now. And I think what it taught me is that when we showing up doesn't have to be you know how. Showing up means that even when you don't know how, you show up and you're there and you do something and you say, even if you say, I have no idea what to say.
Yeah.
How do you need me to be here for you? Like that's showing up more than you'll ever know. It's the people that you tell and then they don't know what to do so they just retreat. That's the weird part.
Yeah. And a lot of people do. So which is odd, but like I think everybody handles stuff differently. I learned this the hard way with my brother because when I was going through my divorces, I would call my brother sometimes, my younger brother, and I would tell him about things. And I learned shortly after that when I would express something negative going on in my life, he would internalize that. And so he told me he can't listen to me. He's incapable of empathy to some degree, meaning like if me telling him that something bad is going on in my life, for some reason he internalizes that. So when we talk, it has to be very surface level, like all of that. And I appreciate his candidness. I appreciate his honesty about it. But like, yeah, it sucks because I'm like, how is like, you can't just listen to me talk and be like, that sucks for you. But
Yeah.
cool. I guess that's how some people operate. But
Yeah, everyone
so
operates differently.
what a so okay, you have cancer, you're getting treatment now. What did it actually look like? What was the
The type of chemo that I was on had a 5% chance of me losing my hair. So I didn't lose my hair. And it was really weird because I felt like if you didn't know, you might just think I was tired. I put on weight. I didn't lose weight because I was on so many steroids that like I packed those pounds on. And so I felt really uncomfortable. So I started wearing like Patrick's oversized long sleeve t-shirts and leggings was my cancer wardrobe. Like that's all I wore.
hot? Yeah.
I looked amazing. But then I did hollow out under my eyes. So and I wasn't sleeping because the steroids were keeping me up and worry was keeping me up and fear was keeping me up. I felt I continued all the way through chemo to feel really disconnected from my body. And it's weird because I did have side effects from chemo that I learned later. I think it's like nerve damage. My skin felt like it was pins and needles all the time. And my skin
Mm.
was uncomfortable and it would almost feel achy to shower. Like even water hitting your skin for my skin was weird for me. And I continued to go to work. I continued to try to show up. I continued to try to do my thing all the while chemo creates this sense of brain fog where I'd be in the middle of a conversation with somebody and be like, I don't actually know what we're talking about. I can't remember why I came in this office and what started this conversation. And so sticky notes became a really good friend of mine. I'd have to like take notes during a conversation to key myself into what was going on. Like it it was it's hard to wrap your head around, but the human body is really amazing that we can do all that and then recover afterwards and get back on track
Yeah.
afterwards.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
So you really so like your body obviously felt it, but you also felt like your mind kind of shift from the chemo.
Oh, 100%. Well, in a many ways, not just from the drugs, like brain fog, chemo
Yeah.
brain fog is a real thing, but also your priorities shift. So I uh I have this really embarrassing story that I tell on my blog that I will reiterate here, but one day I was sick from chemo and I was on my way to work and I would go in extra early because I knew that I would probably have to stop a few times and be sick from whichever end. And I needed to get to work on
Yes.
time, so I would take my time. Well, I made it to Target 5 minutes before they open, and I realized that I am going to be ill. I'm wearing a dress that day, and not only am I ill, but I'm ill on the sidewalk, and this not this kind of ill on the sidewalk outside of Target. And the Frito-Lay guy and I make eye contact, and I'm like, "Oh God, he knows. He knows that I just shot the sidewalk here in front of him, and I still have like 3 solid minutes to wait until Target opens the doors." So I'm like, "Oh, this is the most humbling day of my life." And I walk in and I'm beside myself and I'm in tears. And so I call Patrick, and you know Patrick. I call
Yes.
Patrick and I'm like, Patrick, I have to tell you something, but you cannot laugh. And I'm crying. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, I just
I
shit
wish I could
myself
have had a
outside Target.
camera on
Oh,
on Pat for that
I do
moment.
too. Now I do too. So I tell him this and there's nothing. It's dead silent. I'm like, did you mute me? He's like, you told me not to laugh. I had to. I'm like, damn it, Pat. But he did show,
That's
he's like,
amazing.
okay, go buy some leggings, go buy an oversized white button up shirt, go buy some
Yeah.
wipes, go buy some soap, get yourself to that family restroom and give yourself a shower
Yeah.
and like clean yourself up and get yourself to work. And so I also like excuses are hard for me now because Derek, I had that happen and I made it to work on time and didn't make excuses about going in for the day. And so when people call me and they're like, yeah, I just had a really rough night. I'm like, yeah, well, did you ever shit on the sidewalk outside Target and still make it to work on time?
Because you had cancer.
Because I did.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, bitch, get here on time.
So, I mean, that's a very humbling, very awkward story, but that's the kind of stuff that happens to your body. I had no control over that. I couldn't make it any longer. I tried like hell to make it not happen in my life. And, when you've had a really humbling experience like that, you realize one, if you're over a certain age and you tell people that you've never had an accident, you're probably lying. But like also life is full of these things that we don't talk about.
Yes.
I also had a really hard time with intimacy. Like cancer and the treatment changes everything in your body. It
Yeah.
changes every cell in your body. And there are a lot of other medications that I had to take to get back to normal. And so finding a new baseline and finding a new normal and being comfortable talking about it, because God knows I'm not the only person who's been through this.
Oh, for sure.
We don't
Like these
talk about it.
conversations need to be had. Yeah. Like
They do. And
and
is it embarrassing? Heck yes. But you know what? I lived, and my husband didn't judge me,
yeah.
so I don't really care if anyone else does.
Yeah. No. And anybody that judges you, I mean, like people that don't know what's going on obviously are going to judge you because they don't know what's going on. But if anybody with even an iota of a soul knew what was happening, they would have all the grace in the world for you in situations like that. Because
I
that
really
sucks.
wish I could have told the Frito-Lay guy what was going on, but I was too embarrassed. I bet he's got an epic story that he tells.
I would have just yelled, "I have cancer."
Oh! I was like, oh, he saw that.
You're like,
Yeah.
no.
Somewhere there, maybe
okay.
he'll see this. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry you had to see that.
We are going to find a way to get this podcast to that Frito-Lay guy. We will. We will. This is my goal from now
Forward
on.
to a Frito-Lay guy near you.
Yeah. I'm calling all of them. You need to watch this. Tell me if have you seen this woman before outside of a Target? So, you're cancer free now?
I am. I'm in remission. My cancer is one that we will monitor forever. My numbers can go very low, but there's a very, very good likelihood that I'll have to go through treatment again. My sincere hope is that by the time that happens, they'll have a pill I can take and I won't have to be hooked up. I had a port that was right here, and that was very uncomfortable. So as soon as I could get it out, I did. I'm still in maintenance treatment. In about 2 weeks, I start my final round of maintenance treatment, which is immunotherapy. And cancer responds differently to chemo than immunotherapy, and they work really well in conjunction with each other. And immunotherapy, at least for my cancer, ends up being really successful in lessening the chances of it coming back sooner than later. So my hope is that with this maintenance treatment I've done, and then with the amazing research that happens on a daily basis, that by the time, if I ever have to go through it again, it'll be much easier.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that is fantastic, and I'm happy to hear that at least.
Thank you.
I mean, it sucks to hear that you're going to be dealing with this for the rest of your life. Like that sucks.
You
But
know, it does,
at least
and
it's yes.
it's
And
fine.
what?
It's good. I have a full life. I have an amazing husband. My life is back on track. I've got scars that I didn't have before, and I wear life differently than I did before. I have a greater sense of compassion in some ways, a lesser sense of compassion in other ways. I don't take anything from anyone anymore. It's made me value what's important, and it's made me really hyper-focus on what's important. So I don't hesitate to cut out negativity, and I really lean into the people I love, and I make a point to be with those people. And, life gets busy. We have a hard time, but I try now, every time I'm thinking about someone that I care about, I'll drop them a text. And I try now to show up for my husband the way that I would want to show up for him if it was the last time I was going to see him. And I think the perspective change has helped me realize that, one, yes, I had cancer. It does not define me, but it also, I think it made me a better human.
That's an incredible statement. So and amazing to hear. So I like to end this podcast on with another question, which is if in 10 years from now, Wes in 10 years from now had to come back and give you advice right now, what do you think Wes from 10 years from now would come back and tell you?
You're still sweating the small stuff, girl. Let it go.
I think it's good. I like it.
Yeah. I mean,
The
I think Patrick always says, keep it simple, stupid. And there's a nicer way to say that, but it's true. Like we are really good at complicating our lives, and I try not to. I still do it, but when I have a chance to reframe, I don't want to. I don't want to make things more complicated than they need to be. The only thing that matters are the people we love.
Yeah. In a world where we have access to more information than ever before, staying present feels impossible at times. And being in a moment and just being present and being able to be thankful and grateful for what's right in front of you is such, I mean, at some point you look back on your life and if you've missed all of the moments because you're stressed about something in the future or regretting something from the past, you will ultimately regret that probably more than anything else. And so I think that
Very well said.
I think that that's very beautiful. So I love it. And yeah, we'll call the conversation there. Thank you for joining, and I'm excited to keep up with your Substack. I will subscribe as of today, and I will recommend everybody else does. And when we post clips of this, I will put your Substack underneath it. So
awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for joining, Wes. Talk to you soon.